So our final live session this afternoon is Rick Santorum, who is the CNN Senior Political Commentator and, of course, a former U.S. Senator. Rick Santorum is speaking to us this afternoon on the fragility of freedom, and his talk will be followed by a question and answers session.
Thank you very much, Father Ambrose, and it's great to be speaking again at Napa. Not quite as hospitable an environment as what I'm used to, but sitting in my living room will just have to do. Let me just say first, I've had an opportunity to see some of the great speakers that have presented here at Napa, and just watch Chris Stefanik. And the only thing I can say is he asked for an amen. Let me give you an amen, Chris. That was an amazing talk, and actually covered many of the things that I was going to talk about in the context of what's going on in this country in specific. You know, I've been asked to talk about the fragility of freedom, but really Chris is talking. So many of the talks today have focused on the reality of this country being in a place that is almost a foreign land to many of us. You know, what is going on is the most common question I get when I greet friends and even passersby who know who I am, and they're just flummoxed by what they see going on in this country on a variety of different fronts. But from my perspective, as someone who's been engaged in this battle for a long time and has been out there fighting, this is a very predictable path that we have been heading down, and we are now just seeing the boldness of those who have been out attacking our freedoms and trying to undermine the basic fabric of our country for a long time. One of the things I've heard is that politicians, Democratic politicians, liberal politicians, leftist politicians, whatever we call them, are taking positions they never would have taken 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And the answer to that is true. But that's not that because they didn't believe them 10 or 20 years ago. They did. They just didn't feel that the environment was right to say it. Now they're emboldened to say things that they've always felt, but never had the courage to say. But what they did have is they had a bunch of people who did have that courage. They had people who were, quote, true believers, who were out in the fields, plowing away, working away to change the culture and change the environment. And part of that process is it required an erosion of certain institutions in our country, which have systematically fallen one by one to the influence of those who I call them the anti-freedom. You hear so much from the left about tolerance and how we have to celebrate diversity, but the reality is they don't celebrate diversity when it comes to diversity of thought, and they are simply intolerant of anything that doesn't agree. I heard Chris talk about that these folks have the zeal of Puritans without God. They have a God, and Chris identified it. It's the God of self. It is their own ability, as unfortunately Justice Kennedy and the Casey abortion decision talked about, the ability to find one's own concept of existence. That's the creed and the gospel, and of the new world that we are looking at in the United States of America, and it's one that is counter to faith, obviously the biblical faith, but it's also counter to freedom. It is the cancel culture. It is no tolerance of anything. And you can say, well, how did we get here? How does this happen in America? You've seen it happen. You see it happening around the world where freedoms are being lost. You're seeing it in Hong Kong. You say, well, that's the communist China, and eventually that was going to happen. You've seen it in Venezuela. You see it in Colombia going on right now. You're seeing it in a variety of other countries where just an erosion of basic liberties and in a turn to ultimately authoritarianism, but almost always, in fact, I can't think of any instance in the current culture where it's not aligned with authoritarianism around socialism. And so this battle that we're engaged in, this systematic battle that we've seen cultivated over the last 50 years, where the left has come in and foundationally been able to capture institutions. And those institutions have formed the next generation of Americans, and to the point where now you see younger Americans who prefer socialism over capitalism, who have no sense of faith or in an eternal God, much less the biblical God. All of these things are a result of a systematic approach by a bunch of passionate people who believe in this gospel of theirs and have gone about the process of toppling institution after institution to take it over to then indoctrinate. First it was the colleges and universities, and that's why for a long time in this country, the elites in this country have tended to be off to the left a little bit and increasing numbers. Why in increasing numbers? Because just like the Democratic politician who was afraid to say something that they believed before but can now, is now people feel more comfortable in voicing what's in their heart. And they feel comfortable intellectually to be able to do that because they're not going to be vilified for doing so. My point is that we are here not by accident. We are here not all of a sudden. We came about this honestly, and we came about it candidly. For those of you who are my age or older, on our watch. This is something that we presided over. This is something that whether we saw it or should have seen it, it happened under our watch, and we're responsible. You can say, well, I didn't participate in it. It's not a matter of participating. It's a matter of activating. Chris talked about this in the earlier part, is the passivity of which the church has acted during this time. When I say the church, I don't mean the clergy, although certainly the clergy, it applies to the clergy, but it certainly applies to the people in the pew. Chris's admonition about revitalizing the church. The church can't fight if the people in the church don't want the church to fight. The church can't stand up for things alone. They have to stand up and have the church behind them. And the church won't be behind them unless they are informed and catechized and organized. And that's not just the mission of the clergy or the religious education person out there. It's all of our obligations. And it starts obviously at home. One of the things I haven't done this today, given a long laundry list of the problems that face our country, but many times I do. And so people come up and say, well, what should I do? And the answer is start doing something. Every one of us have to start doing something, and not just, in isolation. One of the things that I truly admire about Antifa and other leftist organizations and atheistic organizations is the passion by which they are committed to their cause. We have had it so good for so long, we don't even know when things have gotten so bad, because we just keep thinking things are the way they were when they were so good. And because it probably hasn't directly affected us. It's going to directly. If it hasn't, it's going to. This is they are not going to tolerate you and what you think and what you believe much longer. And then you'll reach the point where you look around, as Thomas More said, to his son-in-law, and say, well, where's everybody to fight? They're all gone. We have an obligation, not just for the future, and certainly for the future of our faith and for the future of our country. We have an obligation for our own souls to fight. In Luke chapter 12, I think it's verse 48, says, to whom much is given, much is expected. To whom more is given, more is required. Not expected, required. The reality is there's no group of people in the history of the world who've been given more in tangible material wealth and goods than those of you sitting and watching this presentation, and those who are your friends and neighbors around. There's no country has been as universally engorged with riches and material things than the United States of America. And here we sit, and it's a country that is rotting, and it's rotting for so many reasons. And we sit here as those adding to the rot because we have not been the disinfectant. We have not been the source of light. And we have that high bar. We are the ones who have been given much, and we have an obligation to go out and do something, not just for the country and not just for the faith, but for our own salvation, because we are not we have been given all these talents. We've been given all this grace, and we need to, as again, borrowing from Chris's, be not the Benedict option, but the apostolic option, and not just in church. I appreciate Chris's focus on the church, and it's absolutely appropriate to do so. But I can't tell you the number of moms and dads and grandmothers and grandfathers that I talk to, and they talk about their children being lost. I mean, I understand lots of things happen, but that's you. That's on you. That has to be your priority. You've got to focus on that. You've got to have the passion. You've got to be willing to try and lose and lose and lose and lose. Mother Teresa says God does not call us to be successful, calls us to be faithful. We need a bunch of faithful people who are trying and losing. Let me assure you that the folks on the left lost and lost and lost and lost. From the 50s and the 60s, and even before that, they kept losing and losing and losing. They never gave up. They kept trying. They lose, they go back in court and file another lawsuit. They never gave up because they believed in the rightness of their cause, and they wanted the world to change. Folks, we had the world, and now it's being taken away, and we don't know what to do. Because we've never had to fight and hunger from a position of want and need. We are there now, and if you don't feel it now, soon you will. And the reality is, before we get there, let's try to do everything we can in our home, in our church, in our schools. How many times do you hear people say, do you realize what's being taught in our schools? And the answer is no, I had no idea. Why not? Why not? It's publicly available. You can find these things out. Don't you care? Don't you care what indoctrination is going on to your children and to your grandchildren in schools? And what are you doing about it? I mean, you can write a letter, maybe you can go to a PTA conference. Not the left wouldn't do that. They would fight. They would organize. They would sacrifice. Yes, sacrifice. Something again that with our own materialism, it's like the rich man who went to Jesus and said, what do I need to do to gain the kingdom of heaven? And I keep all the commandments. I do all the things you tell us to do. And they said, well, sell everything and follow me. I'm not asking you to sell everything and follow anybody. I'm saying to follow what Jesus Christ is teaching, and just do something meaningful. And not just in one thing, in everything. Make it a conscious effort to be that squeaky wheel, that thorn in the side of the superintendent, that the person who may get fired from their job because they don't subscribe to the left-wing dogma that is being instructed to them to follow. And then, you may have to file a lawsuit against them, and you may lose. You probably will lose in the courts today, but they lost too. And then someone else filed another lawsuit, and someone else filed another lawsuit. And combined with all the other things going on by others who are doing the same, things change. I just encourage you that if you value the freedoms that we have, these freedoms that are the greatest in the world, these freedoms are in peril. We have the luxury still today to be able to go out and do the things that I just talked about. Now, you might be criticized for it, and your neighbors will will look askance at you, but you still have the freedoms to do it. If you saw any hint of what is to come, look at what happened when COVID happened. COVID-19 happened, and you saw real fear in the hearts of Americans. And with that, a tremendous increase in government asserting power and authority over people. And people complied. Now, for good reason in many cases, because of the concern of the pandemic. But as we now know more about this pandemic, we still see people complying. And one of the most interesting things is the most popular politicians in America are those who are the ones who are the most controlling, the ones who want to, quote, protect people by asserting the government's mandate. Fear. I saw Peggy Noonan's column the other day, that the coalition of the worried. We have a lot of people in America right now in a unique situation where they're afraid, just like they were during the Great Depression. And Franklin Roosevelt kept passing bill after bill to take care of people, even though it was destroying the economy in many respects and not letting it recover. And yet they kept getting reelected. Why? Because people are afraid. They want someone to care for them. In fact, that's what I just saw a survey the other day, that 57% of Republicans and 78% of Americans want the government to do more. I mean, here is a tremendous opportunity for us. You say, well, we're not the government. No, but you're the preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, as Chris said. You've got the answer to fear. If you have nothing but your life and you don't believe in God and you don't believe in a hereafter, then losing your life is losing everything. And being worried about all the things you worry about is because there isn't anything more than what you have in front of you. You offer something tremendous. You offer the good news, and you offer the love of Jesus Christ. So it's not just, as Chris said, I've referred to as three things, which is, preaching the gospel, yes, but also meeting people in their needs, whether it's helping them in co-op classes and so they can homeschool, or whether it's, meeting people with material needs that they may. This is an opportunity right now when people are reevaluating their lives and actually thinking about what's important in their life, whether it's faith or whether it's family. You have an opportunity right now. If there's any time, and so many people are saying, oh, I'm doing a lot more reading, I'm doing a lot more other things. Oh, I've got time to do all these things that I didn't have time to do. We also have time to spread the gospel. You also have time to show the love of Jesus Christ and what a real Catholic looks like and is and why. So are we going to protect our freedoms? Fragile? Yes. And they're fragile because we've allowed them to get that way, because we've been part of the corrosion of our culture that has allowed it to happen. We have an opportunity, I believe, with COVID in particular, but obviously beyond this moment in time. But don't pass up the opportunity to combat fear, combat worry, combat concern with the good news of Jesus Christ. Father Ambrose, I'd be happy to turn it back to you for questions.
A very moving, very edifying and encouraging and uplifting cause for hope, in the midst of what's a pretty fearful moment in our nation's history. You mentioned, and I think it's probably true for most of our viewers here this afternoon, this evening, the realization, the kind of terrifying realization that much of what we have lost has happened on our watch, as you said, especially for people you mentioned your age and older. And I think that that can engender more of that fear that you were talking about, which can become a crippling fear. So maybe just really concretely, practically, in the face of the woke culture and the fear of microaggressions, if people are going to speak their mind, speak their position, proclaim the gospel, they will meet with a fight, probably, and it might even be around their own dinner table with their children or grandchildren. What do you think can help a whole generation of American and American Catholics face those real personal fears? What is my child, my grandchild going to say? What is my neighbor going to say if I proclaim the gospel with the kind of hope that I feel welling up in my heart? What does that look like when we face that fight?
Yeah, that's a great question, Father. And I would say a couple of things. Number one, how you say it. I certainly talked to my wife about this. Tone is everything, and how you say these things and the way you approach it is almost as important as what you say. And one of the I use the example. My daughter Sarah Maria just started to work for a crisis pregnancy center last week, and I was so proud of her because I see that movement as sort of the answer to your question, which is, for a long, long time, people like me and many, many others before me would go out and try to steer public opinion toward life and against aborting, against the abortion culture, and we did so earnestly and we did so passionately, and we were certainly committed. But what crisis pregnancy centers do is they display personal connection and love of that person and their situation, and they exhibit the love of Jesus Christ, and they do so without trying to twist anybody's arm or force anybody to do anything. They meet people where they are and they share the good news, and they do it with love and they do it with care, and they do it because they have genuine concern for that person, and they're not judging them no matter what they do. Because as I said in my talk, you're going to lose a lot of your conversations. As Chris said, these people don't even love themselves. How can they love the baby? They're going to lose. You're going to lose time and time and time again. But you need to be joyful losers, because that's God's department is winning and losing. It's not your department. You're not there, to put notches on your gun. But, I won this one. No, you're there to proclaim the gospel, and you're there to proclaim the truth. And so one of the things that I used to be worried about, I used to be fearful of, I used to be afraid of losing. I was in public life. I didn't like to lose, and it was and because I thought, I'd look bad, I'd look weak. No, you need only worry about your constituency of one. You need to worry that that you are doing what God is calling you to do, and you're doing it fully with the love of Jesus Christ in your heart. And you do that, you can't lose, because even if you lose the argument, or you're still going to plant that seed, and you're still going to show that beautiful, perfect love of Christ. And so the most important thing is tone and joy and hope and just the zeal. But not an acrimonious zeal, a zeal of real passion and love for the soul of the other.
Something we can all strive for, hope for, try to put into practice. Senator, you've spent so much of your life in public office, and I'm sure so much of your rising and falling, success, struggle, your motivation comes from your own personal experience of the faith. And so I have something of a controversial question related to faith and politics, related to church and state. And it's seconded by one of our viewers, Sister Carol Therese, asking about the church's role in promoting patriotism. And I'm asking for your comments about where the church fits into this moment. And patriotism, yes, but also with an important election coming up, how do you think the church in her institutional presence needs to play a role in that? And is that a delicate thing, or should she be more gloves off? What do you think about that?
I'm sort of the opinion when you say the church. I assume you're specifically referring to the clergy, or religious. I don't know. But when I think of the church, I think of the church. All of us, and certainly the laity. It needs to be very, very vocal and engaged in this battle, because it is a battle. I think it's a very clear battle of good and evil when it comes to the issue of abortion and so many other of these moral imperatives that we're called on to fight for. And I think in the case of the church, the church needs to be very, very clear about what the position of the church is on the issues of the day, and be very bold about those positions. And I don't think they need to mince about what politician holds that position and what doesn't. I mean, it's very clear from looking at the records of people or their campaign statements how they would measure up on the absolute moral issues of the day. Here's my concern with the church is that once you say, well, we want the church to get engaged and involved in the political process, it just opens the door, as I've seen many times, for the church to get involved in agriculture programs and economic development projects, and the morality of all of those things. I think that's highly problematic and inappropriate. I think too often the bishops' conference gets wrapped around the axle on issues that, frankly, that are not moral absolutes and actually are areas of prudential judgment. And I frankly think they should stay away from those things. I think that the clarity of the more narrow focused, clear issues that are unambiguous teachings of the church is the lane that the church has the most authority, and as a result has the most persuasion. And once they go afield on a variety of other issues like nuclear proliferation treaties, you weaken the soup and make it ineffective.
If the institutional church and of course the priests and the clergy and the religious there are in danger of weakening the soup there and getting involved in those kind of ground level policy issues where they ought to be, as you suggest there, emphasizing the moral questions, the more important and highly determinative over not just one policy, but over many policies, and of course then specific things too, like the value of human life. If the church is doing that, and her institutional representatives, the clergy and the religious, could it be then that the lay faithful have a much more important role in then calling the politicians, their own representatives and their own congressmen and women to accountability, and especially the Catholic ones? So maybe the church writ large, the whole church, including the laity in the church, have a role to play in that. And in fact, one of our viewers, Dennis, asks, how can we get Catholic politicians to recall the importance of their faith? So maybe some of that accountability is the church in her members, in her laity, and then that directed back at the Catholic politicians. What do you think about that? And maybe how can Catholic voters and people who are concerned about reclaiming our culture for the truth, how can they best do that with politicians who claim to be Catholic and who are failing in some very obvious ways?
Yeah, obviously, it's always most important in your own district, in your own state, to hold those people accountable. That's where you have the most impact. I mean, if as an ordinary constituent, obviously you can get involved in groups that support candidates, and there's all sorts of organizations that are out there, or if they aren't out there, should be out there, who are engaged in the pro-life cause or engaged in the family and marriage cause and other things, and being very clear about where these Catholic politicians are in their votes on these non-negotiable moral issues. It's important for you as a constituent, though, to hold your own local politician to account, and that in the pre-COVID, that was not just voting against that person or voting for somebody else, but actually confronting them and talking to them and organizing other Catholics in not in a hostile way. I mean, I don't think we need to replicate the tactics of the left, but we do need to have the passion of them, and these politicians need to hear from us, and we need to organize and allow and let them know that there are consequences to continuing to take these positions, and the consequences are electoral consequences. So again, it's simply a matter. And again, I'm not suggesting that you're going to be successful in a lot of these things. Most congressional districts in America, they're not competitive districts. I mean, they're most are, are heavily Democrat or heavily Republican, and so. But you might be able to. We've had a couple of pro-life Democrats, or the one last pro-life Democrat that I know of in Chicago, lose a primary election. I mean, that's a tragedy. I mean, every Catholic in the Chicago area, or pro-life Catholic, should have been helping Dan Lipinski. A good man. I don't agree with Dan on 90% of his issues, but he's always stood firm on that issue, and we need to, particularly those of you, who are Catholic Democrats, need to assert yourself, just like the folks on the left asserted themselves in the Democratic Party. You need to do the same in the Democratic Party, and be that squeaky wheel when it comes to these issues.
Thank you, Senator. We just have time for one more question, and it's a broad question. Coming up into, as I said, an important election, and we've all been reflecting now for a couple of days on the real challenges that we face in our country and as people of faith. So, can you help us to identify some signs of hope in the culture and in politics? Are there any signs of hope?
Well, I think I talked about them today with respect to COVID. I think there is a real opportunity when you have people who are so distressed and so concerned, and look, people's lives have so many people's lives have dramatically changed with being at home, just that being at home, and not commuting, and not going to work. That has opened up people's lives to what's important. And when people are having a moment of what's important, boy, I can't think of a better opportunity to talk about the most important thing there is when it comes to that. And particularly young people, a majority of young people don't believe in God. I mean, think about that. This new generation is completely lost. And if you're a parent, obviously you know where to start. But back in the day when I was growing up, the neighbor's dad or mom didn't feel shy if the kid was off in the wrong direction of giving a good paternal correction. I'm not saying that those days are back, but there's an opportunity now to reach out to people who are just maybe casual folks, and they may be going through one of these turmoil times. Don't pass up the opportunity to reach out. Look, I wish I could sit here and say that I'm very hopeful of the future of the country, and the trend line is really going in the right direction. It's not. I mean, let's be very honest. I mean, you're seeing one political party here just go way off the deep end, and do so with, at this point, seeming like no consequence. I mean, you see them looking like they're not only going off the deep end, but the American public is going to cheer them along and jump off the deep end with them. So there isn't a whole lot to be excited about it in a collective sense, but with this kind of COVID trauma, and potentially with an election trauma coming up in November, there will be tremendous opportunities for second thoughts and second guessing. And if we aren't out there engaging with the truth, and then again, it happened on our watch. It'll get worse on our watch. We have an opportunity to make a difference, and I just pray to each and every one of you. And you don't ask me, don't ask your friends what to do. Just ask God. Say, God, just inspire me. Just please, point me in the right direction. Just let me know what you want me to do. And I have no doubt. Every time I've done that, you put yourself out there and you just say, God, your will be done. I'm willing to lose. I'm willing to be vilified. I'm willing to be criticized. I'm willing to be, to lose my job. I'll do whatever it is to serve you. Let me assure you, he'll find a way. He'll find a way to make sure that you will go through all of those things.
Senator, thank you so much. The Holy Spirit will guide us. And I think that the Holy Spirit he's guiding you, and he has guided you. And so you're a great inspiration for us and for so many. So thank you for your service, and thank you for your words, and happy feast day today.
Yeah, happy feast day of the Assumption. Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Bless you.